How much time do I have?
About 5 minutes.
5 minutes? Okay, I'll try to make this very quick.
The man behind you has really got the plan, so here we go.
Okay, he looks like a very nice man, so even if I take a little bit of extra time, it's Sabbath, so he wouldn't get mad at me either. So how many of you can remember what was discussed last week when it comes to health? What was the topic based on? Food, right? And it was snacking in between meals and how it inhibits digestion, right? So what are some of the ways that snacking in between meals inhibits digestion?
It takes longer for the food to digest before they ate before than it would normally have taken.
Okay. And one of the other things that happens as well, alcohol and gas is produced, right? If you have a whole lot of food in your stomach and then you want to put more in there, it has to start that process all over again while the food that you've had before sits in the stomach and it becomes alcohol, right? It becomes alcohol in the bloodstream, which can also create poisoning after a while. It poisons the blood as well. So my question to you is, how many of you have been practicing for the new week not to be eating between meals? Remember, it's Sabbath, so no lying, okay? Now, even if you haven't been practicing, I'm up here to encourage you and to be your accountability person. So try to keep doing that, to not to be eating in between meals, and see how it's going to help your mind to be more focused. Now, today, I want to talk to you a little bit about diabetes. And we've heard a whole lot about diabetes, right? Especially being Seventh-day Adventists, we've heard a whole lot about health and diabetes. But one of the things that I want to talk to you about diabetes, let me ask you a question first. What is diabetes? There are actually two types of diabetes, right? We have type 1 and type 2 diabetes. So we'll talk about type 2 diabetes today. Type 2 diabetes, it's when you have glucose in the system. You have the insulin as well, but something is malfunctioning. Do you know what's malfunctioning? The cell, right? Remember, type 1 diabetes, you have little to no insulin at all. So the problem is not your cell, it's the insulin is not there. Now, insulin, it's a very interesting, if I want to say hormone or chemical, or let's call it a thing. It's a very interesting thing. What it does, insulin, it's a growth factor. That's one of the first things that you need to know. Insulin, it's a growth factor. And when you're diabetic and you have a lot of insulin in your bloodstream, it can cause a lot of fat production, and it can cause you to get fat as well because it's a natural growth factor, insulin is. Now, insulin cuts as well. It's like a knife. And that's why people get neuropathy, because they have a lot of insulin in the bloodstream that cannot go into the cell, and the insulin of itself, it starts cutting the nerve and the blood vessels. And that's why it starts with the eyes, why people first, they start getting like blur vision and stuff, because that's where some of the smaller vessels are found. So it starts cutting that, and then it starts with the legs and the feet and the arms. It starts cutting things as well. That's what insulin does. Now, how that problem is developed, what you have to understand about insulin is it's like a key, right? You know your key, you push your keys in the door and you turn, right? Well, that's what insulin does. When I eat, the body produces glucose so that the cells and your muscles can utilize it as energy. So what happens is, if you have that insulin in your bloodstream that's produced by your beta islet cells, when the insulin cannot open the door, when they cannot attach to the insulin receptors on your cells to open the door so that that glucose can go in, guess what happens? You have all that sugar circulating in your body, and you have all of that insulin as well that's circulating there in your body as well. And you know what happens? It becomes free radical. It becomes an enemy to your body after lingering for such a long period of time. Now the most logical question that you and I might want to ask ourselves, and I'll close very quickly, is why isn't the cell allowing the insulin to open the door so that your body can utilize the glucose? Well, one of the things that affects it a lot, it's fat. If you have a lot of fat in your diet, the fat that you have circulating in your bloodstream, it fills up those cells and the receptors. And so when you're trying to open the door, the insulin is trying to open the door so that the glucose can go in and do its work, guess what? There's a blockage there. And so we have to be very careful with the amount of fat that we're consuming, especially fatty food. And so I'm not just up here to tell you, stop eating fat right away. What I want to tell you is that try to put a little bit less fat in your diet. Even if it's good fat, just try to lessen the amount and see little by little how your health would get better. Okay, now there's good fat and there's bad fat. The main thing that we have to focus on is, are we getting enough and the right type of fat? Once our diet are balanced, we wouldn't have all of these kind of problems with diabetes and some of the others. So take my advice and be very careful with the amount of fat that you consume. One of the other things you can do is you can exercise. When you exercise, it burns because your body calls for energy, so it will utilize that fat. It helps those cells to be hungry, and that will help to lower the blood sugar as well, because it will help to burn out the fat. Your insulin will open the door, and it will allow the glucose to enter into the cells as well. So exercise also helps, and drinking a lot of water would help to lessen the amount of sweetness that's in your bloodstream. So try to remember that until next week, and we'll try to go a little bit more in depth into some more health talks. Okay? Have a great Sabbath.